On the receipt of my mother's picture, also known as On the Receipt of My Mother's Picture Out of Norfolk, is a 1798 poem by English poet William Cowper, which he wrote because of the love for his mother. William Cowper was born on 26th November 1731 and died on 25th April 1800. He was an English poet and hymnodist. A hymnodist is a hymn writer who writes the text, music, or both of hymns. One of the most popular poets of his time, Cowper changed the direction of 18th century nature poetry by writing of everyday life and scenes of the English countryside. He was one of the forerunners of Romantic poetry. Samuel Taylor Coleridge called him the best modern poet, whilst William Wordsworth particularly admired his poem Yardley Oak. The poem is an elegy lamenting the loss of his mother. The background of the poem: Cooper's mother, Anne, died when she was 36 years old in 1737, when Cooper was 6 years old. Her husband, John, built a monument after she died with an inscription that begins, "Here lies in early years, bereft of life, the best of mothers and the kindest wife." Cooper, then 58 years old, received a picture of his mother in 1790, given to him by his cousin Anne Bodham. In response to her giving him the gift, he said, "Every creature who bears any affinity to my mother is dear to me. I love you, therefore, and love you so much, both for her sake and your own." He wrote in a letter that he would rather have possession of the picture than the richest jewel in the British crown. The poem was written because of how important his mother was to him, and as a result of receiving the picture, completed shortly before his last insanity attack. The poem was first published by itself in 1798, later being published with other poems in 1799. Cooper's most renowned poems depicts the poet at his best when he manages fully to withhold his own personality and permits convention to structure his message. On the receipt of my mother's picture out of Norfolk, written in 1790, which is 53 years after his mother's death and only 10 years before his own. Poem avoids the theme of death and focuses on the mother with only tool available to it, convention. The poem starts with reference to the power of art to immortalize a theme that could have supported some interesting content. The poet gives a theme, and while that face renews my filial grief, fancy shall weave a charm for my relief. An art of the picture kindles an old grief, the art of poem will provide the balm. Neither theme, however, survives beyond the first few lines of the poem. Cooper turns to famous conventions of 18th century to produce a proper comment on dead mother. The text of the poem: on receipt of my mother's picture, oh that those lips had language. Life has passed with me but roughly since I heard thee last. Those lips are thine, thy own sweetest smiles I see, the same that oft in childhood solaced me. Voice only fails, else how distinct they say, grieve not, my child, chase all thy fears away. The meek intelligence of those dear eyes. Blessed be the art that can immortalize, the art that baffles time's tyrannic claim to quench it. Here shines on me still the same. The poet remembers the language of his mother. Poet's life had been rough without his mother and her kind words. He remembers her sweet smile, which can emanate from only her lips, which had soothed him in his childhood. Even though he cannot hear her voice now, he remembers her words vividly, softly urging him not to grieve and not to and to chase his fears away. He remembers her gentle, intelligent eyes, which still shines on him in the same way. The poet expresses his gratitude to all the immortalizing power of art which can baffle or obstruct the cruel and oppressive claim of time. Faithful remembrancer of one so dear, O welcome guest, though unexpected here, who biddest me honor with an artless song, affectionate a mother lost so long. I will obey, not willingly alone, but gladly, as the precept were her own. And while that face renews my filial grief, fancy shall weave a charm for my relief, shall steep in Elysian reverie a momentary dream that thou art she. Cooper welcomes his mother's memories fueled by the unexpected picture of his mother. He feels honored by his mother's affectionate presence as she was absent for such a long time. He is willing to obey gladly, as if the rules were laid down by her. Even though her face in the picture renews his grief as a son, his imagination will weave a charm, that is, create a magic to relieve him, by immersing him in a heavenly dream, though momentary, in which she comes alive. My mother, when I learned that thou wast dead, say, wast thou conscious of the tears I shed? Hovered thy spirit over thy sorrowing son? Wretch, even then, life's journey just begun? Perhaps thou gavest me, thou unseen, a kiss, perhaps a tear, if souls can weep in bliss. Ah, that maternal smile! It answers, yes. I heard the bell tolled on the burial day. I saw the hearse that bore thee slow away, and, turning from my nursery window, drew a long, long sigh, and wept a last adieu. But was it such? It was. Where thou art gone, adieus and farewells are a sound unknown. May I but meet thee on that peaceful shore, the parting sound shall pass my lips no more. The poet then reveals his plight when he lost his mother forever. He launches a series of questions which reveals the pain he went through during that episode. He asks her whether she knew about the tears he shed. Was a spirit hovering over her broken and sorrow filled son, whose life's journey had just begun? He imagines that she must have consoled him with a kiss or a tear if souls' spirits can weep in happiness. He assumes that she is smiling in the affirmative. He remembers the slow tolling of the death bell on her burial day, the hearse which carried her away slowly, and he drew in a long sigh and wept a last farewell to his beloved mother. He vouchsafes that his memory of a burial day is still fresh in his mind. All these memories create a pang of distress in the minds of the readers as well. He contemplates that in her world adieus and farewell might be unfamiliar concepts. He wishes to meet her again on that peaceful shore, so that he does not have to utter the parting words again. Thy maidens grieved themselves at my concern, oft gave me promise of a quick return. What ardently I wished, I long believed, and disappointed still was still deceived. By disappointment every day beguiled, dupe of tomorrow even from a child. Thus many a sad tomorrow came and went, till all my stock of infant sorrow spent. I learnt at last submission to my lot, but though I less deplored thee, never forgot. He remembers how his mother's maidens are possibly the attendees or friends or relatives, filled with grief and concern for him, often gave him promises of his mother's quick return. He wished for her return passionately, believing in their false promises for a long time. The disappointment still lasts in him, and he feels duped every day and tomorrow to follow. Thus, after many sad tomorrows, his stock of infant sorrow was spent. He had to resign to his plight, mourning less for his mother, even though he could never forget her. Where once we dwelt, our name is heard no more. Children not thine have trod my nursery floor, and where the gardener robin day by day drew me to school along the public way, delighted with my bauble coach and wrapped in scarlet mantle warm and velvet cap. It has now become a history little known that once we called the pastoral house our own. He then goes on to lament about the loss of their pastoral house. In the place where they once lived, their names are not heard anymore. Children of other people walking in his nursery. He remembers his gardener Robin, who used to drive him to his school in his bright but cheap coach, while the poet was wrapped in scarlet shawl and velvet cap. All this has become a history. The pastoral house reduced to a short lived possession. The loss of all the childhood warmth is evident in these lines. Short lived possession, but the record fair, that memory keeps of all thy kindness there, still outlives many a storm that has effaced a thousand other themes less deeply traced. Thy nightly visits to my chamber made, that thou mightest known me safe and warmly laid. Thy morning bounties ere I left my home, the biscuit or confectionery plum, the fragrant waters on my cheeks bestowed, by the by thy own hand, till fresh they shone and glowed. All this and more enduring still than all, thy constant flow of love, that knew no fall, never roughened by those cataracts and breaks, that humor interposed too often makes. All this still legible in memory's page, and still to be so to my latest stage, adds joy to duty, makes me glad to pay such honors to thee as my numbers may. Perhaps a frail memorial, but sincere, not scorned in heaven, though little noticed here. But all those painful memories, all the storms and thousand other themes, alike are effaced by the beautiful memories of his times with his mother in the house. He remembers how she made nightly visits to his chamber to see if he is safe and sound, and how she rewarded him with biscuits or confectionery plums in the morning before he left their home. He remembers how she used to apply fragrant waters on his cheeks until they shone. He remembers above these the most endearing thing of all, that is her constant flow of love, which never fell or roughened by blind anger, any other changes in mood or other constraints. All her kind deeds are clear in his mind, in the memories page, and has followed him to his latest age, adding joy to duty. This joy has enabled him to pay honors such as this memorial poem, even at the age of 58. He is daunted by the doubt that the memorial might be a frail one, but he is sure of the fact that his mother in heaven will not scorn his effort, even though the dedication goes unnoticed among other mortals. Could time his flight reverse to restore the hours, when playing with thy vestures tissued flowers, the violet, the pink, and jasmine, I pricked them into paper with a pen, and thou wast happier than myself the while. Wouldst softly speak and stroke my head and smile? Could those few pleasant hours again appear? Might one wish bring them? Would I wish them here? I would not trust my heart, the dear delight seems so to be desired. Perhaps I might, but no, what here we call our life is such, so little to be loved, and thou so much, that I should ill requite thee to constrain thy unbound spirit into bonds again. The poet wonders if he could reverse the course of time by restoring the hours he has with his mother. He remembers the time when he would play with the tissued, that is, the dry flowers, the violet, the pink, and jasmine flowers, on his mother's dress by pinning them to a paper. He particularly remembers his mother's smile at such moments. She was happier than him, and she would speak softly and stroke his head. He wishes for those moments to come back. He wonders if his one wish is powerful enough to bring those moments back. He stops himself at the thought of bringing his mother back to life because there is so little about life which is left to be loved. He does not want to bind his mother's unbound spirit into bonds again. Thou as a gallant bark from Albion's coast, the storms all weathered and the ocean crossed, shoots into port at some well havened isle where spices breathe and brighter seasons smile. There sits quiescent on the floods that show her beauteous form reflected clear below, while airs impregnated with incense play. Around her fanning light her streamers gay. So thou, with sails how swift, hast reached the shore, where tempests never beat nor billows roar. The poet compares his mother to a splendid ship from Albion's coast. Albion's here is the ancient name of England, which has weathered all the storms. It means that it has survived the storms and crossed the ocean to reach smoothly and fast into the port of a safe island, where the seasons are bright and where spices breathe. It is symbolic of heaven. He sees his mother, that is the ship, sitting peacefully and passive on the waters, her form reflected on the water below, while the air around her, soaked with perfume, cooled, cooled her flags into a happy state. The poet admires the swiftness with which the ship has reached the shore, which is not disturbed by tempests or thunderous clouds. She has finally reached her resting place, which is peaceful. Also, her death at such a young age is hinted here by the poet. And thy loved consort on the dangerous tide of life long since has anchored at thy side. But me, scarce hoping to attain that rest, always from port withheld, always distressed. Me, howling winds drive devious tempest tossed. Sails ripped, seams opening wide, and compass lost. And day by day, some current's thwarting force sets me more distant from a prosperous course. But oh, the thought that thou art safe and he, that thought is joy, arrive what may to me. He also alludes to the fact that his father has reached by her side safe from the dangerous tide of life. The poet also wishes to reach by their side, but his hope is feeble as he is always withheld from the reaching the port by devious winds. His ship is tossed by the tempest, his sails are ripped, the seams torn wide, his compass lost. Every passing day brings more challenges to the poet. The current never favors him, and it prevents him from reaching the prosperous course of the safe haven where his parents are. The poet says that he is rather filled with joy at the fact that his parents are safe, whatever his position on earth might be. My boast is not that I deduce my birth from loins enthroned and rulers of the earth, but higher far my proud pretensions rise. The son of parents passed into the skies, and now farewell time unrevoked has run his wonted course, yet what I wished is done. By contemplation's help, not sought in vain, I seemed have lived my childhood o'er again, to have renewed the joys that once were mine, without the sin of violating thine. And thine the wings of fancy still are free, and I can view this mimic shew of thee. Time has but half succeeded in his theft. Thyself removed thy power to soothe me left. Lastly, he says, he cannot boast of a birth from the loins of royalty or rulers of the earth, but he is proud of the fact that he can claim of a sonship from parents who have found their place in heaven. He suddenly comes to the realization that he must bid a farewell to the memories of his mother. Time unrevoked, that is, time which is still in force with his usual course, has come into play again. But the poet is content that his wishes are gratified. By the help of contemplation, he was able to relive his childhood. Thus, he was able to renew the joys that was once his, without committing the sin of violating his mother's rest. He is soothed by the promise provided by the wings of fancy, that leap of imagination which gives him an imitation of the memories with his mother. He says that time has only half succeeded in his theft, even though his mother's physical presence to comfort him has been lost to him. Her memories will suffice to soothe him for the rest of his life.